Hello everyone, Red Vulture here. I know it says Red Wing Vulture on my profile thing, but the problem is that it wouldn't accept that name, so I had to add in something, and I figured, Red Wing Vulture will fit better. Tired. Worked on cleaning the house all day, obviously not in this room as you can tell, but yeah. So I'm really tired, and while I was cleaning today, I figured I'd like to talk about one of my favorite games, one of my favorite game franchises of all time. Now, I know that in my one of my previous videos, my top 12 video games of all time, I would just like to say something about that. In retrospect, that list was made, well, it was rushed. As you may have noticed, I didn't include anything below the PS2 era, so I may have come across as kind of, sort of, a person of less than low intelligence and taste when I made that list. I apologize for that. So, for the sake of drawing out this video for as long as possible, I would just like to say that my favorite gaming genres are typically action games, RPGs, survival horrors, and on occasion first-person shooters. Stealth games, there are a few I like, but it's not one that I would be like, oh my god, it's a new, like the new Thief game, for example. I'm not really all that interested in it because, well, I mean, like I just said, I'm like a broken record, aren't I? I already just said I don't like stealth games that much. I have nothing against them at all, if you're wondering about that either. To me, any game is good and every game has an audience, so for any fans of the new Thief game coming out, I don't know why I'm addressing you even though I only brought it up once, but it looks good as a stealth game. But let's get right to the chase, shall we? Let's get right to the... Yeah, I said it right. Okay. I love good action games, and Devil May Cry is one of those franchises that just... God, I just love it. I just love the series to death. And by the way, don't worry, I will be talking about the reboot in just a few short minutes. I just want to go over my personal feelings over this franchise. Now, the thing is that when I discovered Devil May Cry, it was completely by accident. I had never heard of the series beforehand, but then again, I didn't really have many games growing up. I only had a few. See, the thing was that I didn't really have access to many games growing up. I only had a few here and there, and I would usually replay all of those repeatedly, pretty much. But around the time that I turned 15, I was able to get more and more games. As a result, one time when I was in GameStop, I saw this beauty right here, and right away when I put this into my PS2, I fell in love and I had to have the rest. Devil May Cry is one of those series that you need to play. The first Devil May Cry I played much later after Devil May Cry 3, but I will say right away, it is a classic of the PlayStation 2, and it is a game that every gamer needs to try at least once, even though in my opinion Devil May Cry 3 is the vastly superior game and the best game in the entire franchise. The character of Dante is one that just, if you'll pardon my language here, he is badass. He is the character you think of when the term badass comes into your mind. He has white hair, he uses twin guns, ebony and ivory. He uses Rebellion, Force Edge in the first one, but you know what, I like Rebellion better. And he can turn into a freaking demon. He can use a demon form to kill his enemies even faster. But what separates Devil May Cry from other action hack and slash games is the fact that when you're playing Devil May Cry, you're not actually focusing on you know, it's odd, and I've been trying to think of the best way to word it. But the best way to describe Devil May Cry is you are trying to kill everything on the screen while looking like you're not even trying. That is the whole point of the style gauge on the right-hand part of the screen. You're not really trying to survive a fight or to inflict the most amount of damage to enemies. What you're trying to do the entire time is look as cool as you possibly can. Trying to get that style gauge to go up. Not spamming the same moves over and over, but using different ones and forming your own combos to get that gauge up into the S and eventually the triple S rank. And oh my god, the first time I managed to get an S rank for the style gauge was one of just you know what? It was a much better achievement than anything that any modern FPS has ever been able to do for me achievement-wise. So as you can imagine, Devil May Cry 3 has a very special place in my heart, and the series is one that I can replay anytime I want. In fact, a lot of the time, even though I love God of War to death, and I know that that sounds odd coming from someone who considers themselves to be a real gamer, when I do a God of War video, I'll explain why I love it so much. But a lot of the times, Devil May Cry surpasses God of War in every aspect. So now let's talk about what everybody expects me to talk about. Not the reboot, no. This is about the one that everybody says, Devil May Cry 2 sucks. Oh dear. Don't know why I did that. Well, you know what? I'm gonna pull a razor fist here and tell it to you all like it is. I loved Devil May Cry 2. Shock! Gasp! Devil May Cry 2, but every single gaming website in the world said that it was awful, it was terrible. Yeah, well, you know what? They said Deus Ex Invisible War sucked too, and guess what? It doesn't. See, the main thing... Okay, I will admit, Devil May Cry 2 is one of the weaker games in the franchise. In fact, if I were to make a list of what order they all fall into for me, it's like this. Devil May Cry 3, Devil May Cry 1, Devil May Cry 2, and Devil May Cry 4. I'll get to that in a second. Devil May Cry 2 is still fun to play, and it's still a good action series. I mean, granted, yes, the style gauge has been... you pretty much don't even ever have to use it, and it's hard as heck to get an S ranking when you're first playing it. And yes, Lucia is boring and doesn't really have a personality to speak of. Yes, Dante went from being this badass, gun-toting, wisecracking, darker version of like a freaking superhero to this cold, detached, coin-flipping, bad boy emo wannabe. True, but guess what? It was the gameplay was still fun. It wasn't broken. And for anybody who was claiming that, oh, it's so much harder to play, because I have heard complaints like that, let me tell you this right now, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I played Devil May Cry 2 on the hardest difficulty, and I didn't get hit once. Yeah. So, to all those who complain that it's too hard, get real. Devil May Cry 4, for me, is the weakest part of the entire franchise. And the reason for it is because it doesn't feel like a Devil May Cry game. But most importantly, it suffers from one major flaw that just ruined the game for me right when I started playing it. You don't get to play as Dante. And before you guys say, oh, but that's not true, Red Vulture, you get to play as Dante halfway through. Well, you know what? Getting to... You know what that's like? Let me break it down for you. That's like starting a Mario game and finding out you have to play as Princess Peach for half of the game before you can actually play as Mario. Wait, that actually have... I'm not sure. But, you know, it's like that. Why would I want to play as some whiny... white-haired Ichigo, for lack of a better term, because that's really what he is. In fact, he's voiced by Johnny Young Bosch, so it's pretty much it's pretty much the right comparison. Why would I want to play as him when I can play as Dante? Plus, even though the gameplay was good, and you know that is the most important aspect of it, it never felt like Devil May Cry. The environments were always too bright, the enemies were always too clean looking. It just didn't have that grittiness to it that other Devil May Cry games had, and it didn't have that dark, stylish sense to it. So in that regard, that's... You know what? And you know what? Despite the fact that I do have lots of complaints for Devil May Cry 4, I still like it. I still play it. I just think it's the weakest one, and I still like Devil... And you know what? To anybody who says Devil May Cry 2 sucks, you're entitled to your own opinion. I think it's a good game myself. So it's in the last 30 seconds of this video, let's talk about the DMC reboot. When I saw it, I said, why did they turn Dante into a Twilight character? I played it for a bit, I repeat, for a bit, and I couldn't even get through it after that white wig joke. It's not a Devil May Cry game, and I will go on record saying that. It's a game about someone who thinks he's Dante, but he's just some meth addict, blood on the dance floor wannabe. That's it. The combat system's dumbed down. You can get S ranks like it's freaking candy, which I find insulting considering all the practice that most people have to put in to get S ranks in Devil May Cry. And also, I have a problem with reboots in general in video games, so the fact that it was a reboot didn't help. Dante isn't cool anymore. He's not badass anymore. He's not fun to play as anymore, and the Devil May Cry games have been basically dumbed down so anyone can just pick them up and get, I'm getting S ranks, I'm getting S ranks here, look dude, I just killed all those enemies. Oh, and plus using a heavenly sword mechanic where only certain attacks will work on certain enemies, wow, isn't that just going to just, God, you know, I'll get into that in a different video actually when I talk about God of War Heavenly Sword. It's not a Devil May Cry game, and you know what, I might just do a full-blown video on it, because honestly, it almost infuriates me as much as Tomb Raider. The remake. Almost. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, because I enjoyed making it and talking about a series that I love to death. Red Vulture, out.